Vito. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1639 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management Inc. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, making his Toronto Mic'd debut, is Amin Bhatia. Bhatia. You know what? You gave me a trick. I'm going to let listenership.
Yeah, sure.
A thin tortilla. Amin Bhatia. And I think I got nervous.
That's
like, Amin,
good.
I'm nervous in your presence. What a pleasure it is to meet you.
It's an honor to meet you, sir. I've heard about you from so many people. Let's
name those people. I got time. Let's go.
Let's see. Chris Pack, Rob Johnson, Alan Cross, Kim Hughes. I mean, most of the CFNY guys, right? And then, of course, on the musician side directly, Arlene Bishop, Kurt Swinghanger, Chris Tate, Laurie Cullen.
There's two Chris Tates. Do you know this? Okay, this is a fun fact.
I did not know this. No, I'm talking to Chris Tate from Chalk Circle.
Of course you are. But there's actually two Chris Tates who are musicians in Toronto and worked for agencies, ad agencies.
Oh my goodness.
And I literally thought I was booking Chris Tate from Chalk Circle. And at the door was the other, who's a lovely, talented, he works closely with Lowest of the Low, one of my favorite bands of all time.
Okay.
They're both great Chris Tates,
Right.
but I got the other one and I was surprised.
An audio producer I worked with for decades, who's my mentor, David Green. There are 3 David Greens in Toronto, and one of them is an editor.
Yeah, you need unique identifiers. There's only one Toronto mic, right? And there's only one thin tortilla. Amin Bhatia.
Nicely done.
Okay, I'm going to work on this. I think by the end of the episode I'll get it right. But you did drop the name when you ran down that list. You dropped the name Arlene Bishop.
Yeah.
Okay, I find this to be a fun fact. Okay, so I've had Blair Packham on the show many times. Blair raves about his ex-wife, Arlene Bishop.
Right. It's a nice friendship. It's a nice thing to see, actually.
That's the model, right, Amin?
Yeah.
If you can't make the marriage work, then you want to be good friends like that.
Yep.
And I've met Arlene's son, also Blair's son. I've met him. So I've been hearing about Arlene Bishop, and I know Arlene Bishop as a very talented musician.
Right.
Always on my list to come on. And then she finally makes her Toronto Mic debut, and you do not come up in this conversation.
That's fine.
Did you listen to Arlene? Yeah, no, it's fine. But
I did, and I loved it. And you were interviewing Arlene the artist, which is exactly what it should be.
Also, what is fun to me is I had no idea she worked with you. It's not that I didn't bring you up. It's that I didn't know you were to be brought up.
And that is the multiple worlds that Arlene has, and that's the way it should be. I was looking for a really solid right-hand person as things were starting to take off in my career, and I just needed someone to handle, everything from social media to client, and we had a studio for several years that we ran. And I'd seen her and Blair performing. I just loved them both as artists individually and together. And then she just replied and she says, "Why don't I do it?" And I'm like, "You're Arlene Bishop. What are you talking about?" Right. She says, "I got to do something during the day." And she's brilliant. She's one of those rare right brain, left brain people that can come up with all this creative stuff, but also be incredibly organized. So absolutely, a large part of my success in my career is wonderful people beside me, like Arlene, and there's others. My wife Danielle and my 2 daughters.
We need that list
Kelsey.
now.
Yeah, we need that. Okay, my wife Danielle, my 2 daughters Angela and Kelsey, their mom Rochelle, who is a great mom to them. So we have this similar thing to Blair and Arlene, by which there are ex-wives, ex-spouses.
Oh, I got the same thing too.
Yeah,
I got the same
exactly. And you know what? As you know, for the kids, right? Just, you can put all that stuff aside because it's these beautiful kids that we created.
My two youngest kids have a different mother than my two oldest kids, and they call the mother of my two oldest kids, they call her T-Dog, and she's essentially like a character. She's a member of the family. Like it's all this modern family. It's everybody gets along, and it's kind of. I can't say we're quite Arlene Bishop, Blair Packham, but we're working on that. That's the goal, right?
That's a high
where's it going?
standard.
So Arlene Bishop working with you for many years, and I didn't know this, and I had she came by for her Toronto Mic debut recently. But meanwhile, there's this parallel, which you may know. I'm interested in all things CFNY, both the Spirit of Radio era and the 90s when I listened for the entire decade. And that's where you'll come in soon. But do you know, I'm wondering if you even know how you came on my radar.
I'm guessing it's possibly through Arlene, but I also know that you're connected to CFNY, and I came into it just after the Spirit of Radio days. So just as they were revamping and rebranding, and the whole Edge.
Who was the PD when you got there?
Stuart Myers.
Okay.
Stuart Myers and I went to college together.
Oh wow!
We were both in the broadcasting program at SAIT, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. And it's, as you know yourself, right? You stay in touch with people from high school, from college, and things show up from the wildest of places.
Well, I learned about you specifically because I produced the Humble and Fred show, and I got an email from Dan Duran.
Oh, wow.
So Dan Duran wrote me about you, but prior to knowing who you were, Amin, back in 2006 or 5, in Humble Howard's old matrimonial home where he had a box in his garage, which was full of number 1 and 97 CDs. He threw me other CDs that he took with him when he left 640 for Mix 99.9. So we're in 2002 or so. Maybe no. Yeah, around there, 2002 or 3 or whatever. But on the CD were all these IDs and all these stingers. Yeah. And I ripped the CD to MP3s, and I kept them on my computer. And even before I produced Humble and Fred, I kept these stingers and IDs, and I'll play some soon. Goodness. But I loved these things, these 90, and when I play them for the listenership, they'll go, oh yeah, if you listen to CFNY, you remember them. And then when I got the email from Dan Duran, and we booked you on Humble and Fred, and I think I reached out. Great. I had a link to some files that you had created, and I realized, I have most of these from that CD I ripped from Humble Howard's garage in Oakville. And I realized, that's you. And so you're not here at all because of Arlene Bishop. Like, I only found that out well after you were in the calendar. She reached out and said, you won't believe this, but...
That's wild.
These are all parallel happenings.
There's so many parallels.
So I know I'm not starting with you at CFNY because... I got an email from Rob Pruce. Do you know the name Rob Pruce?
That's a familiar name. Give me more. I'm terrible
Spoons,
with names.
Romantic Traffic.
Oh, right.
So he was the keyboardist for Spoons in their glory days. And I was saying you were coming on, and I mentioned the CFNY connection. And this is what Rob wrote me. Don't bury the lead on A Thin Tortilla, Amin Bhatia. So you have to say them back to back.
I'm good.
Okay. He played synth on Thriller. Please ask him all about working with Toto and Michael Jackson before you say a word. I was just telling my wife about Amin Bhatia. His name is one of those magical names I will forever remember from faithfully reading album credits on the inside of a record, especially with Thriller. There were so many contributions to those songs. I always remembered Amin's name then, and I would see him mentioned in Keyboard Magazine, a technical music magazine, which I read every single month ever since I was 11 years old. He did so many interesting musical twists and turns, but always at the forefront of synthesis and electronic music. Amin, I don't even know exactly where to start, but maybe I'll just play a little bit of this song right here, just a little bit. It's not Halloween, but we can play it. Man, I need to know everything, man. Like, what does Rob mean? You are on this song? Is that
Okay.
like, talk to
Well,
me.
you've obviously prepped a whole bunch of material. First of all, Rob, thank you. My goodness. I grew up reading liner notes for Wendy Carlos and Tamita and Steve Porcaro and David Page. So it's very nice to be, liner note idol to someone. Rob's talking about the album Thriller, right? And you just played the title track.
I played the
from it.
title.
You
Okay,
played
so,
the title
okay,
track.
Okay, right.
If you have the whole thing there, you could look up "The Girl Is Mine," which is Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. We're going into Google Land. Well, that's all right. I'm gonna have some of this hop pop, this wonderful
From Great Lakes Brewery.
Great Lakes Brewery, part of your
Yeah,
good breakfast.
have that, and then we're gonna hear in a moment "The Girl Is Mine." I played the title track, but he means the album Thriller. Okay, now it's all coming together here.
All good.
So I
It's a
did all my
small
homework.
contribution,
I don't
but it
have an
is me.
Arlene Bishop working with me, so I have to make my own mistakes here. But
That shows up about 4 or 5 times on the track.
Every night she walks right in my dreams since I met her.
vocalize it. Can you vocalize it?
That little thing at the very top. It shows up a couple more times in the song.
So do you appear in the credits for the album Thriller?
Oh, I wish.
Okay.
No, I was an intern for David Foster, so it's a mixed blessing of thank you, David Foster, for introducing me to LA, and David Foster, why didn't you put my credits on the album? I am credited on Keyboard Magazine. Rob talked about that, and I think at the time Keyboard was talking about how they used 8 keyboardists on Thriller, which at the time was unbelievable that have that many keyboard people involved, and I guess technically I'm the 8th one. So this song, if you look it up later on, there's a song by Lionel. Was it on Lionel Richie's album? No, it was on someone else's, Al Jarreau's album. And it's a song called Mornin'. And it's based on an instrumental track that David Foster was playing. David had heard some of my earlier tapes from a Roland competition, and he really liked the synths and the tape things that I was doing. And so he flew me to LA. I lived in his house for a week. And he had a 24-track studio in his basement.
You
which
lived in
had
David
never-
Foster's
I
home
did.
for a week.
I did in David Foster's home for a week. Thank you, David.
I would have you on just for that. Okay, we could just talk about Tears Are Not Enough.
That's pretty amazing. Actually, the thing I think is amazing is when he had Natalie Cole singing with Nat King Cole. What a brilliant idea, and how beautiful that must have been for her, for his daughter to be singing with her dad. Through the magic of tape. I thought that he's an amazing guy. He's absolutely amazing guy. But this little effect was actually meant for another song. And, when you're in a studio and you got to quickly come up with something to please, Quincy, he just grabbed this from that. It's a sample, I guess, if you will. They tried to recreate it, but they didn't know what the synth was. So they just used that. I can tell you now officially it is a Jupiter 8 synth. And everybody wondered about the sequencer that was used because the Jupiter 8 doesn't have a sequencer. And how did you get multiple voicings on the Jupiter 8? Quite simply, it's a pair of notes. I just basically played a major triad chromatically coming down. So everybody was trying to duplicate it on sequencers and computers and stuff, but I basically just kind of played it in this bell-like sound.
They should have credited you.
It would have been, yes, it would have been nice. It would have been nice.
So did you receive?
I mean, keyboard. Did I what?
Receive a penny?
No.
Because I heard that album sold a few units.
I know. But you know what? Eddie Van Halen, I think, did a solo, and I think he's still waiting to be paid. So, I joined the line of amazing session players that, there's a few times where like, why didn't we invoice for that thing?
How is that hop pop from Great Lakes? Then?
Hop pop from Great Lakes is absolutely amazing.
Okay.
And even for someone who is not a beer drinker, I'm looking at the camera now.
Sure.
Even for someone who's not a beer drinker, I find this light and refreshing. And this is the non-alcoholic version?
Yeah,
right?
there's no alcohol in
Yes.
there.
Good.
So it's not technically that's not a beer. It's a hop pop, but
It's near
it's
beer.
for the people who don't want alcohol and want to have a tasty beverage at Great Lakes. That's a great option. I'm just going to crack open Burst.
Oh, I broke the rule. You were going to get me to do that, and I didn't. So.
You know what? I butchered your name in
There
my
you go.
passive aggressive response to that. So okay, so I'm going to enjoy my Burst here.
There we go.
So now I need to know, how the hell do you end up living with David Foster? Like, maybe bring me even further back and get us to there. And and then eventually we'll get you to radio. I got a lot of questions for you, man.
The music thing, I'm so self-conscious when I say this because I know there are people out there who are studying valiantly to get into music, and they have 12 years of piano and theory and, and have studied all the masters, and they're trying to find their break. And for me, I'm so sorry it happened by accident. I never expected to make a living making music. For me, it was sound and tape and radio, and that was the day job. That's where I studied, the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, and my plan was to go into radio.
Where were you living? Edmonton?
This is Calgary.
Calgary. Okay, my
Calgary.
wife's from Edmonton, so I
Yeah.
just assume all Albertans are from Edmonton. But
That's all right. It's a lovely city. We both help each other now. We used to be rivals, but I think over the years, Calgary and Edmonton have realized, hey, we're better together. So
Calgary was ahead of the curve in hating Gretzky. Like, I remember we all loved Gretzky because I was a Leaf fan. We had a terrible team, and Gretzky was out winning all these cups for Edmonton, the city of champions. But the Calgarians, rooting for the Flames, hated him then. I'm like, how do you hate Gretzky? Well, I caught up to them. I'm a bit mad at Wayne Gretzky. This is my way of saying I now understand what the Calgary Flames fans were thinking back in the 80s here.
There we go. That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
So, radio job. But I loved, gosh, it was, as a kid, friend introduced me to synthesizer. I started hearing synthesizer music. Wendy Carlos did this album called Switched on Bach, which is all this classical Bach stuff, but it was done on a synthesizer, this weird, amazing sound. And then a Japanese artist, Isao Tomita, he started doing all these classical pieces by Stravinsky and Prokofiev, and they're all done on synths. I thought, this is amazing. So playing those albums for my dad, and bless his heart, he was like, well, maybe we should try and get you one. So my mom and dad, we went to the music store. My dad had no idea the cost of the thing. A Mini Moog is like $2,000. And my dad was like, what? And my mom was like, look, we're not giving him a giant university degree. He's going to technical college. Let's figure something out. So God bless them. They went into their credit card.
And remember, that's 2000 and what are we in, early 80s? Where are we?
We are earlier. Yeah, we're 1978.
Okay, that 2000 was a
still see
lot of
the
bucks
receipt
back then.
for yeah. There was what, sorry?
Well, $2,000 back then was a lot more than $2,000 today.
It was huge. It was a lot. It absolutely was a lot.
I'm now thinking, right now I'm thinking if my 10-year-old came to me and said he wanted one, and the price tag was whatever $2,000 is today, that's quite a lot of money.
It's a lot. Bless his heart.
So you have a good parenting there.
Wonderful parents. They were wonderful to me. So it was a combination of synths and tapes and making strange sounds. And because I worked with tape and because I loved all this orchestral stuff, I started building these small pieces of music that got to the attention of a lot of people. I played it for my friends. I played it for my sister Anissa. I played it for my friends Dennis Quinn, Dave Kletke, Bruce Ellert, and they all started saying, we really like this. You should keep doing more of this. And then Roland Synthesizers, bless them, they have a synthesizer competition. So I was working on some music for a radio play. A college friend of mine, Linda Faulkner, was working on this sci-fi thing. So I'd started prepping some music for her. So I put a 5-minute thing together, and I submitted it to the Roland Synth competition, and it won. But just as importantly, the judges on the competition were Oscar Peterson. Tomita was part of it. Bob Moog was one of the judges. And then Ralph Dyke, who was a producer, programmer who worked at Roland in Vancouver. He was the one that got my winning tape. And he was the one that introduced me to David Foster, and he introduced me to Steve Porcaro.
Wow. So Toto fame. Shout out to Stu Stone, who will be here Wednesday. That's like his favorite band of all time.
Very cool. Very cool. The David Foster, there's been several times I've had a chance to go to L.A. And because a lot of people ask me, why aren't you in L.A.? You're doing all this shit and you have all these accolades. Like, why are you not in L.A.? There were 3 times in my life that I could have gone to L.A. And that first one was David Foster. David was like, how are you doing what you're doing with a Mini Moog? And, let me fly you down here. Okay. So he flew me down. I sat in a recording session. He picked me up and he said, I just have to help a friend of mine. You don't mind, right? Just hang around in the studio while I'm helping this friend? I said, sure, of course. It's your dime. You've picked me up. You do whatever you want. And his friend was Burt Bacharach. And his friend Carol Bayer Sager. And their friend Neil was coming over to sing this song called Heartlight. And there I was in the recording session for, the Heartlight song by Neil Diamond. And it was very, very overwhelming. And David was like, just sit in that chair right there. That chair right there. Just sit there and just watch. I said, no problem. I'm watching this and watching them try out things and stuff like that. And then this person comes up and screams at me. He says, get the out of my chair.
You can swear on this show, Amin.
Can I? Yeah. Get the fuck out of my chair.
There you go.
Da-da-da-da. It was Neil Diamond.
Of course.
David had accidentally put me in Neil Diamond's chair. So
Fuck out of my chair.
that's a nice way to start. And then
That's
someone
a story
shows up.
you can tell for the rest of your life.
Well, someone shows up and says, "Hey, there's this car that's double parked. We got to move it. Whose car is that?" "Oh, it's David Foster." "Oh, you. Move." So like 48 hours after winning the synth competition, I am moving David Foster's car from one parking lot to another. The whole thing was very, very intimidating. I did not, at that time, have music theory. I didn't learn, I had perfect pitch. I learned to read, to this day, I'm still better music by ear than by sight reading.
Interesting.
And in LA, it's all about, session players, and you got to have this, and you got to have this, and you got to have this. And I just got grilled. Like, David was wonderful, but all of David's people were like, "Okay, so where did you study?" "Oh, you didn't study." "Well, then why are you here?" It was very, very overwhelming. And because I was into all this classical stuff, that's not really David's thing, right? He was doing, Al Jarreau, and he was doing Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie and stuff. So we parted amicably, and he, thanked me, but we didn't really think much else would come from it. But I have to thank Steve Porcaro, because it was Steve Porcaro years later that had heard my stuff, and he said, "I want to bring you to L.A." And at first, I turned him down. I was like, "Yeah, thanks, done it. No, thank you." I found the whole thing intimidating. And Steve was like, "If I leave you alone in a studio, can you create music?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That stuff you played for me, that's not anyone else. That's you." I said, "Yeah." He says, "Then what's the damn problem?" David Page's wife, Lorraine, wonderful lady. And she asked me, she says, "Where did you study?" And I said, "Well, I didn't really study." And she just went, "Don't. Just don't." And over the years, now we have a lot of composers. We have Hans Zimmer, we have Danny Elfman, we have all these, amazing musicians who don't read music, and that's fine. But when I was, getting into the scene, if you didn't have that kind of stuff down, nobody was going to take you seriously. So that first trip in LA was terrible. The second trip to LA was with Steve Porcaro, which changed everything. I got to work on the Fahrenheit album. The Toto people, I think of them as gods that walk among us. As you've heard from anybody that's talked to you about Toto, they are brilliant, like galactically amazing human beings. But they are also humble, and they always want to learn, and they are the nicest people ever. So the second time around, what an amazing launching pad that was.
Okay, so which time around was the piece you composed that ended up on The Girl Is Mine?
That was the first time around.
Okay, that's
that was
the first
me
time around.
trying some things for David Foster that suddenly showed up on the Michael Jackson album. Okay.
Okay, but first, did it show up on an Al Jarreau song? Is that what you said? Or was it
Okay.
intended to be?
I went back to my humble little radio job working at CFCN Radio in Calgary, and you would know this. The job was to take the 45s that come in every week from the record companies and take the thing and put it on and then record it over to CART, which is an endless loop, right?
Right.
If your kids ever misbehave, you could get them to thread CART
But, I only
machines.
know this from talking to people like you.
Yeah,
Like, I've
thank
actually
you.
never seen
Yes,
this
from
in
old
action.
people, yeah.
People my age.
But that's when I heard it. That's when I heard that little thing on this Michael Jackson thing. And my first thought was, oh my God, they ripped us off.
Yeah.
And it was David says, no, I just grabbed a sample and I gave it to them. And I was like, oh, well.
It's not too late to lawyer up here. I mean, we could contact Lauren Honickman after this program. I don't know. I just know it sold a few
You know
units.
what? He's amazing. I don't want to make any trouble. I just, it would be nice to get a portion of it. But, how much, what's that going to involve? So. And he did fly
You're
me
being
down.
very,
I know I go through this. I
gentlemanly
didn't
about
realize
this.
you'd go into this today. But, I go through this all the time. And I go back and forth on it. So maybe there's a way to figure it out. Maybe David is hearing this. And, but he just send a little thing my way. Just it's just a little paperwork.
This is... I wasn't planning to do this, but it's sitting on my... No, it's nothing to do with you, actually, but it's David Foster, which is that somebody listens to Toronto Mike and knows I talk about Tears Are Not Enough all too often. And they were at the recording, and this was handed out at the recording. Like, I'll let you... So this is basically... Because I know you'll... At some point, we'll do a gift exchange like they do at these international tournaments or something like that. But basically, this was like everybody who was at the recording of Tears Are Not Enough. And David Foster was tapped on the shoulder by Quincy Jones, I guess at a Grammys or something. Or I can't remember. I guess it was Grammys. But it's just David Foster's a guy I would love to talk to. Have you had any contact with David Foster?
You know what? Every few years, I see him at something or whatever. It's really not kind of nice because I go visit him backstage and all these people say, no, you can't. And then David goes, oh, I'm in. Let him in. So that's nice. It's been a while, actually, to be honest. But yeah, every decade or so, I get a chance to say hello to him. Look at all these contributors and gold patrons and stuff. Yeah. So why are you showing me this? As if I don't feel bad enough already?
It's tied to you should have been invited to that recording is what I'm telling you. You and Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and
Steve Porcaro listened to my stuff and said, "You are amazing." I said, "Steve, I would love to learn from you." He says, "Are you kidding? I'm learning from you." We texted 3 days ago, and he just I was thanking him for something else, and whenever I talk to Steve, I was like, "Thank you for my career," and he just said, "Thank you. I learned more from you than you've ever learned from me." God bless him.
Last time I played audio, I had the wrong song because I knew you were on Thriller, and I just thought of the track instead of the album. Well, I'm glad we got the Girl Is Mine. And from now on, whenever an FOTM, and you're now an FOTM, Amin, that's a friend of Toronto Mike, but whenever an FOTM hears The Girl Is Mine, and it's still heard all the time, they'll hear that part. And they'll say, that's FOTM.
That's a 19-year-old geek on a Jupiter 8.
That's a 19-year-old geek on a Jupiter 8, and that's a thin tortilla, Amin Bhatia. Okay, I'm going to play another song for you here as we enjoy our GLB.
Goodness.
So let's listen in the headphones. Amin, what are we listening to?
We are listening to The Interstellar Suite, which is an album that was done by Cinema Records, which Steve connected me to. That album is all analog synthesizers, so there's no samplers. There's no real instruments, but there's no fakery of real instruments, which is what I'm really proud of. It's very weird. This doesn't happen often where someone plays me my music and I just sit there and smile. This is very weird. It's like an audition. But yeah, this was the next step of my evolution, getting into film music, getting into adventurous orchestral classical music, but using synthesizers. That was my double life. So it was going back and forth between radio, which is very extroverted and silly and fun and theater and all that stuff, and then this film music world, which is very insular, which is very personal and very Star Trek-y. Like, I am the ultimate Trekkie. Yeah. And so these two worlds have just coexisted side by side, and I've always wanted to get more and more into the sci-fi world and doing more and more things along that line. This record label folded very quickly, unfortunately, so the album wasn't out there very long. It did get the right attention from the right people. And like then thanks to the bless your heart, and thanks to the internet, I started getting fan mail off the internet from people like so we then, I brought in a few other people, and years later, I'm still fighting with Capitol to get the rights back, so they sub-licensed it to me. And a few years ago, I got the great engineer Frank Moroni to remix the album in 5.1. So if you like it like that, when you hear it with multiple channels, and
so Amin's going into his gift bag. He's like Santa Claus here.
And
He's
I'm giving you a Blu-ray DVD.
Suite.
There it is. And since you've been researching it, this is a nice little book that comes along with it. It'll tell you all about it. Steve Porcaro's in there. In fact, Steve wrote liner notes, bless his heart.
Wow. Okay.
So
thank you so much.
Honored. I you know what? I didn't know if I wondered whether I was to bring it or not, because I didn't know if you were going to get into the Interstellar Suite stuff. I knew we were going to talk about the radio side.
At some point, if I don't get to something you want me to get to, just interject, man. I missed that. Arlene Bishop was in this basement recently, and your name didn't come up, which is, you're right, we were focusing on other things.
It's all about Arlene.
She could have interjected that, and I would have been like, oh my God, I just corresponded with him thanks to Dan Duran. He was on Humble and Fred, blah, 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 blah. And then
all good. But when she mentioned you later, and she told me, she says, Toronto Mike wants to interview you. So again, thank you, Arlene, yet again, which connects us through multiple things. But you know this, right? There's so many connections that happen in so many different places.
I'm going to blow your mind with one in just a second, but I don't want to bury the lead that the Interstellar Suite, is that what it's called? Or is it okay.
Yep.
You have a couple of solo. You have how many solo albums do you have on your belt?
Technically,
Virtuality.
Virtuality was the second album, this one was all about going to outer space. So the Virtuality one was all about going inside a computer, and doing music that way. It was kind of this one was like Star Wars, so the other one was like Tron.
Okay, it's funny. We just kicked out Space Jams on. We do this monthly toast where we kick out thematic jams, and we just did Space Jams. We just have it in the wrong order. I would totally be playing the Interstellar Suite if we were doing it next month. But my goodness, I feel like, okay, so I just want to understand the radio, because you mentioned the 2 streams, but on the radio stream, you're still on the radio in Alberta?
Back and forth, yeah. I have to ask a question because we're in radio, and I'm looking at the clock. How much time do we have? How long are we doing this?
I didn't even think. I thought Arlene would hit you up that I take as long as I freaking want. You're not allowed to leave. Why? Do you have a dentist appointment or something?
No, not at all. It's just, again, having grown up in radio, I'm waiting for the next break. I'm waiting for a clock to count down. Like,
so you're my second episode of the day. Did you? And you popped in just to see what was going on when I had Bruce Davis, who's we talked about the shelter that's coming to 66 3rd Street.
Actually, a few weeks ago, I checked out some of your podcasts.
So I always think when a guest is coming on like you, I said, I already know before we sit down, this is 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how verbose you want to be. Because I don't think we could do your career justice in, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Do you think that the great thin tortilla, Amin Bhatia, it's funny how I think I have like not a learning, I think there's something where I can't, because I do butcher a lot of pronunciations, and I actually think there's something there. Maybe Arlene Bishop can help me out with that. She's discovered more about herself in her in her later years. But there's something there.
All good. The bottom line is, as you're doing this mnemonic, you are pronouncing it perfectly correctly.
Yeah,
so it's fine.
But as long as you're okay with the fact, I'm going to say thin tortilla before I'm in Bhatia.
Totally fine.
Every single time.
I don't care what you call me. Just call me.
But when you're on a show, let's say Humble and Fred, because you were on Humble and Fred. So I think that was 15 minutes.
Yeah, probably something like that.
So in 15 minutes, do you feel like the listenership will understand your complex career and the different streams and everything?
No, I don't think so. I don't even understand.
And I'm not criticize Humble and Fred, because the Humble and Fred show, the way I look at it, because I've been producing that show for a long time, the Humble and Fred show it's about Humble and Fred. Like they're the stars of the Humble and Fred show.
Absolutely.
I don't ever think that that I am the star of the Toronto Mike podcast. I think I'm here to shine a light on you and extract as much thin tortilla from you as I can.
That's very
time.
kind of you, and it is a big part of your success because you have a genuine interest in people. So it's an honor to be here talking to you. It's just back and forth for me. It has been really schizophrenic. As I look back on things, I was in radio, then I got into this music thing, and some of it worked out, some of it didn't, and I'd go back to radio, and then I'd come back again. I was in Vancouver for a while with Z95, working with Brad Phillips. That happened after my second daughter was born, and we were trying to start to make a living in Vancouver. But then David Green called from Toronto because he heard my tapes, and I started to get more and more work in Toronto. So we ended up coming up to Toronto, and my first wife did not like Toronto, and I think it contributed to some of the divorce.
Yeah, that's tough, yeah.
But it's been all over the place. And then every now and then things go dry. So when they go dry, I'm like, well, let me go back into radio. So CFNY was that time where in 92, 93, I was in between a whole bunch of different TV shows, and things were a little slow. And Stu Myers called and said, you got some spare time. Why don't you help us with some radio stuff?
And how did Stu know you?
Again, we'd gone to college together.
Oh, yeah. I should remember that. You told me that earlier.
It's all good.
Stu Myers, I did once ask Stu Myers' daughter to come on this program when she was on CFNY. She was on the radio here.
Oh, very cool.
Carly Myers, yeah. And then
I'm terribly sorry. What is it that Carly did? How is she connected other than his daughter?
Carly was an on-air DJ voice. She was on air at 102.1. So
no idea.
I do like to speak to the radio people. And,
yeah.
She politely turned me down, but you didn't, and you're here now.
Carly, don't. He's amazing. He's kind. He'll give you 90 minutes to talk about your life.
Well, now she's out of town.
You could talk about your dad. You could do therapeutic stuff about your dad.
I invited her dad on as well, and he also kind of didn't feel up to it.
Stu is a visionary. He's very quiet. He's always been like that. He's like, I just saw the special, the Saturday Night special. He's like Lorne Michaels. Something goes really well. He's like,
high praise.
Yeah, okay, good. And he just walks out the room.
He was
like that since college.
You know who had very high praise for Stu Myers when I had him over was George Stroumboulopoulos.
Oh, of course. Okay, let me throw this in at you. George got me coffee once because he was one of the earliest technicians on Humble and Fred, and I was doing a lot of radio production, and one particular time, as he is known to be so kind, he was doing a coffee run. He said, you need anything? So George Stroumboulopoulos got me coffee.
It's such a small world because he was on The Fan 590 doing all nights there, and he was on with like Jeff Merrick, and they had a show.
Yeah.
But he was chatting up Stu Myers because he wanted to get on 102.1, and then Stu gave him an opportunity at 102.1, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah.
Okay, and shout out to Bob Makowitz Jr., who was also on that show on the Fan 590, because Bob Makowitz Jr.'s father was the program director, and that's how the world works, right? You get some time overnights. It helps when your buddy's dad is the PD. Can't hurt.
Can't hurt. I think you've still got to have talent. You know what? All this nepotism, different people find different ways to get. You're not going to last long. Like, it's a combination of whatever your skills are and then how well you work with people.
Oh, without a doubt. Strombo, very talented guy, made a great
Absolutely.
career out of himself, and Merrick as well, who's had a good career. But here's a voicemail? Not really. It's a recording made by an FOTM when he heard you were dropping by. You ready?
Yeah.
Here. And it goes a couple, I'll be honest.
Do you remember that show, This Is Your Life? That's
Yeah.
what it is you're doing. Like, oh, it can't be.
This is your life, Toronto.
Okay.
So you mentioned it was the early 90s when you got a job at 102.1 The Edge.
Yep.
And here I'm going to play it, but I will just let you know, we run a couple of minutes. This guy, if he's listening, maybe like 30 to 60 seconds on these, but I'm going to play the whole thing because that's the kind of show this is. Here we go.
Lord, okay. Oh, yeah.
Hello, Mike and Amin Bhatia. It's your good friend Robbie J.
Oh, buddy.
When I saw Mike was having Amin on, I thought, thank God, because Amin is a bloody genius. I can't stress how incredible this guy is. I'll give you a little bit of a story here of why Amin is so incredible. So I'll take you back to 83 Kennedy Road South in Brampton. This was, some 30 years now, 30 years ago now, in early to mid 1995.
So you want to add music to this now?
I was brought in as a part-time producer to take on the role that Craig Venn had vacated when he left to go to the Fan, and I was given the opportunity, and working with Jim McCordy and the incredible creative team of Rob Baird, Jamie Watson, Karen Fisher. And Amin was in from time to time to fill in for Jim when Jim was on vacation. And this is when I got to know Amin. Keep in mind, in these days, we were editing on multi-track, 8-track, multi-master tape with quarter-inch tape to record voice track and stuff onto. And I would watch Amin produce stuff there, and I was just in awe. He would take the multi-track, he would overdub to, quarter-inch tracks onto it, back and forth, cutting things, layering them in, using the outboard processors. It was freaking magical. And for me, a pretty wet behind the ears producer, I just kind of watch in awe in the background. And I don't think Amin really understood everything I was absorbing from it. But I would say confidently, I owe a lot of my creativity and thinking to watching, observing, and listening to Amin in those days, because what I learned from Amin and Jamie Watson and Jim and others is push the envelope. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just challenge yourself, because that's going to challenge the client and that's going to challenge the listener. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but you'll never know unless you just get out there and give her a go and give it a challenge and see what your skill set is and just keep building on it. So Amin, I don't know if I've ever said it, but thank you for being a truly inspirational producer, mentor, and incredible guy.
Rob Johnston.
My wife and kids make bets as to what can make me cry, and that just did it. God, Rob, thank you. I think Rob's amazing, and we talk from time to time. I had no idea I was that much of an influence. I am honored to be part of your success, Rob. Thank you for calling. And I don't know what this means to anybody else, but that was a beautiful 2 minutes. Thank you for playing it, Mike.
Happy to. I wasn't going
and all
to
the
edit
people he
that.
talked about, they're all friggin' amazing people. And you know this. You build a great team around you. You build, you surround yourself with wonderful people, and magic happens.
He mentioned the name Jamie Watson.
Oh, Jamie's amazing. What a riot. What a fun guy he is. I knew him back in the Calgary days as well. Yeah.
Another guy who won't come on, but he says he won't do any podcasts. So don't take it seriously, Mike.
Why?
I don't know. If you can talk him into it, here's what I want to talk to him about. You ready?
Yeah.
And I have to mimic it because I don't have it loaded up or anything. So
Right.
here we go. Ready? Don't want to be flabby anymore. Don't want to be a fat guy. Rubbery, blubbery, out of shape dude. Look at me. I'm a pear.
That's
him, right?
It's him. Jamie could just rattle off anything and everything. He's wonderful. Maybe what you can do is, based on this lovely studio you have with a low ceiling, but maybe get a whole bunch of CFNY people together.
Well, have you heard episode 1021?
No, I have not, and I need to now know that. I need to now hear that. So
if I ran down the list on that one, and Robbie J's on that one, no Jamie, obviously, but Humble and Fred are on that one.
Fred on there.
May Potts is on there.
May Potts, great.
Alan
if we
Cross
can do
is
that,
on there.
If we can bring Rob Baird and Karen Fisher back from Los Angeles, maybe they can join us too.
I'll zoom them in.
But that would get Jamie on board.
Okay, you know what? I'll do that. I'll
Okay.
get them all, and you'll be you'll be in studio for that.
I'll be wherever you want me to be, buddy.
Because we'll get those remotes. We'll pipe them in through Zoom, and maybe get you and Jamie in the basement, and let's do this.
That would be wonderful. Jamie's amazing. He really is.
Here's some Jamie, I believe. Let's listen to this. So those are the kind of IDs I was talking about earlier on this CD.
Fun with those.
So you're the sound designer for those?
Yeah, in some cases, like some people wondered that I played guitar and did all that stuff. No. In many cases, a lot of bands, if you listen to the song, in a lot of songs, there's an instrumental break, right? And in other cases, when they're promoting a song, the radio station gets multiple mixes of a song. So they'll get the song that everybody knows, but sometimes they'll get an instrumental version. And they do that so you have commercials. And so you can talk about this next album coming up brought to you from whatever. They give you an instrumental track. So we used that sometimes and then found whatever talent we could find in the hallways of CFNY to kind of either voice something or Marla, who did Traffic. Marla, I can't remember her last name.
I've had correspondence with Marla, and now
Yeah, what's her? It's terrible
amazing.
last names now.
I'll kind of Google it during in a moment here. So Marla would be one of the people who would you'd recruit to be
and she had this. So for some of the female voice stuff, she would be the voice on that. In a couple of rare cases, I think I did create some tracks. We once did a Tori Amos ripoff thing, and I think for that I played a whole bunch of piano. I think they got Tori to sing "Humble and Fred." And so I vamped the piano around all of that, and I got to play with Tori Amos. Of course, she doesn't know. So
love Tori Amos, but she doesn't know. I'll tell her. Don't worry. But I just Googled. I can't remember. I Googled Marla Traffic CFNY.
And what do we get?
My own site. Okay, so TorontoMike.com is the source now for this.
All I think is Marla MacGyver's, which is a Star Trek character.
No,
so
we're gonna get this right here. Hold on here. Marla West.
Oh, God. I'm sorry, Marla. I remember
but I
every
just find
wonderful
it,
thing about you. I'm getting really bad at last names for some reason. It's really weird.
I'm mildly amused by the fact that I hit up the Google machine and I search for something I'm looking for, and I'm my own source. Like, isn't that interesting phenomenon? There's got to be a word for that.
Cool. Yeah,
got to be a word for that.
Yep.
Okay, I'm not nearly. I got lots more CFNY stuff for you, but okay. So Robbie J, with that beautiful piece he recorded for you, he opened it with this. I'm going to play not his version, but another version I have.
That last chord is me on synth. I think I brought some of my synth stuff up to CFNY, and so I did some of that stuff. All the other stuff is just random production library that we found from all sorts of things. And it's funny what Rob was talking about as far as layering and things like that. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I would just fly onto reel-to-reel tape. And we had a 2-track tape machine, and I still think I can play tape machine better than I can play keyboards.
Oh, that's funny.
You just cue things up and know.
Right.
You learn how to back time reels. That's one of the things I taught Toto. They'd never seen that before. The idea of back timing a reel and seeing how many revolutions it takes to get to a downbeat. And, DJs do this all the time, but there I was teaching Toto tape machine tricks, which is pretty wild.
So I like this ongoing history of new music theme song we're doing right here, this deep dive here. So I'm going to play it again. So it's just Like stuff?
It's stuff. The really fast, rapid-fire stuff,
Yeah.
the CD players were just starting to get into that search function. So we just grabbed, a production library thing and put it in and just and hit the skip button and go right.
And then you just-
because we were trying to do a history of music, right? So
Right.
which piece of music do you pick? So I thought a whole bunch of them. So right.
And then you just, with your synth, you hit a note there at
big
the end?
thing at the end, and we needed a vocal swoop, so we got that from some library somewhere, and then there it was.
Okay, one more time.
And yep. The radio swoop at the beginning, that's me on a Mini Moog as well. We did that.
Did you know they'd still be needing that theme in 2025?
I did not. I did.
They celebrated 1,000 episodes.
I know. And bless Rob and Alan's heart, they invited me. I was part of the live audience. In fact, we chatted
Where
for a
was my
little while.
invitation, Amin? Come on. I guess you have to do more than just listen. Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, but
Now that you've saed that, I'm sure you invited to anything.
I had Robbie J and Alan Cross in the basement to talk about the the anniversary of Ongoing History of Music.
Great.
Still didn't get an invite. Come on, but
it was. I don't know what to say.
I'm just trying to cause some shit here because that's part of the fun here. But that I will say that song for many, I was going to say many a Gen X, but it's probably it's gone beyond Gen X.
I have been. I received a communique from Rob and Alan, and they said, "Please give Mike some historical stuff." So this is a glossy brochure from 1994.
Wow, in '94.
Stuff. It's in my little CFNY binder that I have, which I thought I'd bring to show you. This is for you.
Wait, do I get to keep that, or do I get to just read it?
You can read it and you can keep it. That is a
Well,
rare,
honestly,
glossy brochure
I'm
just for you.
Find space here beside the 1986 Shoppers Drug Mart Blue Jays calendar. I'm going to make some space here for this.
Well, there you go.
Oh yeah, no, I dig it here. And here's like concert presentations here. Oh, this is of the moment. And I was listening in 1994, of course. I needed to hear more Green Day. So
please take that as an apology from.
It's funny when you say that we have a communique, because you know what I think about? It's a Wonderful Life at the end when we got a what's it called? Western Union? What did they telegram? We have a telegram from whomever or whatever says to wire $20,000 immediately. Stop. It's like you get the instant communique via telegram to save George Bailey and the savings and loans. So that's what I think about right there. So Change of Heart. So I see Change of Heart here, and I have tickets to see Change of Heart. They have their first new album in 27 years, and I'll be seeing them in April on Geary Avenue here. And I see Killjoys. I've had many Killjoys on here. This is my cup of tea, Amin.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Thank you.
I wanted to bring something nice for you.
No, you're kind. Much kinder than that Robbie J and Alan Cross.
Good
my
Lord.
goodness gracious.
Let's there.
I'm going to play some stuff randomly, and you can just, I don't even know. I just loaded up stuff, so I don't even know what I got here. Let's hear what I got.
That is a very famous opera singer who was singing with the Toronto Symphony at the time. She was an amazing guest. I don't remember her name, and I feel terrible. Could it be?
She's the
Nisha
real deal,
Gruber
because there's no one
Gosling?
on staff who can hit that.
No,
note.
no, she came in, and I just asked her what her repertoire was. And again, because I'm a classical geek, I said, "Do you know Carmen?" She said, "I know Carmen." So I just played some chords, and then I fattened that up with some synths. So yeah.
I love hearing how this stuff came together. Okay, so I have a few more here.
Humberland, 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 friend.
Corky and the Juice Pigs.
Yeah.
No, Moxie Fruvis.
Moxie
Do you know
Fruvis.
what? I don't know which
Moxie
one.
Fruvis.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was working with elementary sampling at that time. I had this keyboard that I think could save like 6 seconds of memory. So it jumps back and forth between Humberland, and I'm just starting to do remixes on a friggin' keyboard.
Now that I know this is some members of Moxie Fruvis, let me hear it again now then.
Humberland, 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 friend.
These are the kind of IDs I'm talking about. Okay, let's get in the holiday spirit.
Oh, little town of humble friend.
Whose voices are there?
That is Rob Baird, Karen Fisher, Jamie Watson, me, and I think on some of these we brought Jim McCourty in because Jim actually has a very good singing voice. And then we recorded it first, and then I went back to my studio and I added all the church bells and sound effects and music, and yeah. These were fun.
Love hearing how these cakes are baked here.
It really is.
It's disgusting. Humberland, friend. Hallelujah.
That's a popular one, right? They play that one quite a bit.
That's Disgusting Hallelujah came from a production library back in the 70s. You know, they had a jingle singer and they had jingles just doing all kinds of silly things.
So this is
you know?
not you.
That's not me, but me singing Humble and Fred, that's about 4 of me in there.
Okay, let me try it again.
So
then.
customized.
That's disgusting. Humble and Fred. Hallelujah.
Gotcha. So it's,
And
some
added
library
some bass synth, I think some orchestral synth stuff to it. Just
Oh,
to make it.
geez. Okay, no. I don't.
And again, you know what?
yeah.
That's the beauty of radio, right? People talk about this when they're sampling or DJing, right? You just have all these elements just sitting around, and you just grab the fastest thing that will get you to finish that deadline so that you can move on to the next project, right?
Absolutely. What am I going to... Okay, so you mentioned the Carmen. I have another version. Let's see if it's any different here.
Humble and Fred.
Yep.
So
Same
session
session,
with the
same
same woman.
vocalist. I don't know the vocalist. I'm so sorry.
But did she send you an
There
invoice?
are 15.
Or,
There
was she
are
a Humble and
15
Fred fan?
talented, amazing world-class singers in Toronto that work with the TSO and the Toronto Opera Orchestra. I'm sorry, I don't remember who you are, but you were amazing.
Well, it was a long time ago.
You know what? It's just part of promo, right? I mean, the Tori Amos thing. I don't know if that's there, but somebody
let's
just
hear,
asked
let's hear what
Tori-
I have here. You ready?
Yep. It was on air when Howard just asked her. He just, well, would you sing Humble and Fred? She says, what? And he says, Humble and Fred. So she just went, Humble. And he quickly gave it to me. He said, do something with this. So I'm vamping and timing out, and it's me on piano after the fact.
After, yeah, post.
And trying to make it sound as close as I could to, I don't know, Leather from the first album or something like that.
I'm today years old, as the kids would say. When I learned that's actually, I thought it was someone mimicking.
No, that's Tori.
Amos.
We grabbed the thing that she sang for Humble and Fred.
Because it's very much kind of a cornflake girl.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that was like
No,
that's amazing.
That's really
Thanks
her.
one more time. Love Tori Amos. Wow, that's amazing. Okay. And let me see what I have here. One more holiday one here.
Humble's outside building a snowman. Fred comes along and knocks it down. They start fighting on the ground, man. They're filled with Christmas love all year round.
So funny. You can just see Humble and Fred out smiling and throwing snowballs and stuff. I think that's the same group that I was talking about earlier. So Rob Baird, Karen Fisher, me, Jamie, and I think Jim Cordy.
They sounded good together.
Yeah, we had fun.
Did you consider taking it, I don't know, starting your own little jingle company out of this crew?
There are so many jingle companies out there. I do a lot of work with Ari Posner, who works with Pirate Radio. I mean, they all do such amazing things. I will say, when you're inside a radio station, it's its own form of pirate radio. Like at CFNY, we were encouraged to do anything. And so Jamie, me, Rob, Karen, we would come up with the silliest stuff. And within hours, it was on the air. That is such a rush. You don't get that in other ways. Even people that do improv theater, like to be able to create something like that is such fun. I think I do want to thank you for this. I think I do want to get back into radio again. I think I'd like to help another radio
you're
station
good at it.
do some
you know
things.
what? I don't know budgets, but it's funny. I voted. Was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday I voted. No, 2 days ago. I voted my kid at a hockey game, and then I voted. Then I went to hockey practice, and was hanging out with Mike Stafford for an hour.
That's
Speaking
great.
of radio veterans there. And I met, I won't name his name, but the guy who I know quite well because he comes to my events and he loves Toronto Mike, but the gentleman who's, he works at Indy 88. And then I was chatting with him about Bob Willett. Do you know Bob Willett?
Give me more.
Well,
I don't think I
when do you
worked
leave
with Bob.
CFNY? When do you leave?
Around 95. That's
Okay, you're
when all the
gone, yeah.
music stuff started to take off, and so I just couldn't juggle the two.
Well, you don't overlap with Bob. He comes a little bit later than that, but he did end up producing the Humble and Fred show and worked with them, Bingo Bob. But we were chatting quite a bit about Indy 88, and I'm feeling like this revitalized energy for Indy 88. They really should hire you.
Let me know. I'd love to do some silliness for them.
Okay, so Indy 88, I know you're listening. Look, I'll introduce you to Amin, and let's get stuff cooking here. It's the dawn of we're given like it's a rebirth for radio. We're gonna pump some of that energy you felt in the early the 90s when you were at 102.1 The Edge. We're gonna bring that back to life at 88.1 here today. I don't think Chorus could afford you.
From what you told me about Mike, let's hope Chorus takes care of him properly. I was listening.
They're
to
not. I can tell. Spoiler alert. He had to file suit within 2 years of being fired to try to get money, and it's been 2 years since then, and we still don't have a penny.
In my radio projects, in my music projects, in my television projects, there are so many giant super corporations that swallow up another corporation, and as soon as that happens, all kinds of liability and responsibility falls apart. It's really sad. It is not an uncommon story. I'm still, like I said, I'm still dealing with my record company to try and get rights back for Interstellar Suite.
Well, on your behalf, I'm contacting Lorne Honigman after this recording, and we're going to go after some of that Thriller money.
Bless your heart. Let's do it. Can we do it nicely?
Well, when you sell that many units, I'll take 0.001%, and you won't have to work anymore. We're going to work on this. Okay. I don't know what this is, but there's an original of this, and then there's a Carmen version of this. So I thought, what the heck? You're a prisoner in my basement. I'm just going to play it because you can't stop me.
Yes,
so this
sir.
is the original.
You got a request from your dog?
Yeah, OJ likes Hey Mon Hey.
What kind of dog is OJ?
He's a Belgian sheepdog.
Let's hear him bark. Let's see how big he is. Oh, he's a monster. Jim?
Yes.
You'll be our very first real live listener to request Hey Mon Hey. So can you do it like they do it on the Nooner? Say, hi, I'm Jim from wherever you're calling from, and I want to hear Humble and Fred's Hey Mon Hey. And it might, then we can, cut it up and use it as one of our stinky little promos.
Okay. Hi, this is Jim from Toronto. Can I please hear that wonderful classic Hey Mon Hey?
Okay. Close. Here we go. Yeah, it's not bad. For an amateur. Here we go. Sing with us, OJ. Hey Mon Hey. 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 We always get screwed up with that part. It's a pretty simple song. You think we can get through it? I know. And OJ's barking. Really, there's such a sense of community here on the program. Thanks, Jim Sean.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Bye, OJ.
So there's the original.
I think I know the next one. Before we get to the next one,
sure.
That is a track Humble Howard found somewhere. He just found some old song or something, or maybe it's a production library. And I don't know whether he or Fred just came up with singing along with it in some happy Caribbean, Jamaican way.
Right. And
And then the thing took off, right? This stuff, this was the kind of things that go viral. Like radio would go viral on things long before the internet. And so that's just them having fun. And then the thing just started to take on a life of its own. So we tried different voices, and I think I know what's coming.
Well, here's one.
Things you want to say.
This is the vaudeville guy, and when I'm in Toronto, I listen to Humble and Fred on CFNY.
Input 102.
Humble and Fred, I cannot believe it. You had a world-famous opera singer on your show, talking, singing, having a happy time, and you didn't get her to sing Hey Mon Hey. I mean, think about the lost opportunity here. What's the matter for you guys?
Input 102. 459 EDGE. From CFNY
Right.
102.1.
Yep, that's me. Well, I produced those, so yeah, that's me sticking that in the end as some sort of courtesy. Yeah, that track is all me. The Input 102, all the beds and the sounds and the stingers and stuff. That was before internet. Right. That's I know Stuart was the one that directed all of us to start doing that. I don't know where the original concept came from, but this idea of you being able to phone the radio station and asking for things or saying what you wanted, and then a few hours
it be like
later,
a Speaker's Corner type deal?
Yeah, exactly. And hours later, you're part of some promo that's on the radio. It was the beginning of anybody can get out there and be famous kind of thing.
Okay, so we're gonna get you out of CFNY now. So it sounds like you had a good time.
It was a wonderful time. It really was. There's several times I've gone into radio in between all this music stuff, and it's been wonderful. I mean, it started at FM 96, the Moffat Communications people in Calgary. Then it was Z95.2, 0.9. God,
It's got to be point like odd number.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. Z95.3. I can hear the logo in my head. And then it was CFNY, the 102.1 The Edge.
Okay, and when you got there, Stu Myers was the PD. Yep. When you left, was he still the PD?
Yes, I think so, but I think he was being groomed for the next level of the Empire kind of thing.
Okay, cool, man. So you're a part of this this station, and
it was an amazing time.
The doc doesn't go as far as, I think it ends in 92 or something, but they made a documentary about CFNY.
If it ends at 92, then that's just before all of this happened. So that's the spirit of radio, which itself was amazing, right?
Yes. Of course, some people say when David Marsden walked out the door in 1987, that was the end of the spirit of radio. So, but this is where it gets in the weeds here. And I was busy listening to 680 CFTR anyways at this time. So.
But you know what? That's like arguments between Star Trek, the original series, and Star Trek, the Next Generation, right? You get loyal people to both, and you try and tell them about the other one. They're like, no. So it's everybody has their loyalties, and that's absolutely great. Spirit of Radio is amazing.
But you made a lot of audio that I have been enjoying over the last many years. I've had that CD since over 20 years now. I've been listening to these stingers, these IDs that I remember from the radio. I woke up to 102.1 throughout the 90s. I was in high school for part of that. I was in university for another chunk of that, but that was my morning station, 102.1, and that meant Humble and Fred.
It's very cool.
You think it's cool. I just realized I now produce that fucking show. So, I'm sorry, pardon my French, but I am now producing Humble and Fred. I just had this realization, like, I now produce that show.
There you are.
Exciting times. I gave you the lasagna. Did I give you lasagna?
No. Is this what this is? Oh, lovely.
Well, the box is empty, but it's in my freezer.
Right. Okay, thank you.
But would you take a Palma pasta lasagna with you, Amin?
Love it. My wife and I love Italian food.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Palma Pastas in Mississauga and Oakville. People can go to palmapasta.com. Do you say pasta or pasta?
I'd like to have some pasta. I think I say pasta, but I've been known to sometimes go pasta.
See, it's funny. I think I naturally
it's like
say
Americans,
pasta.
sorry or sorry, right? Depending on. Sorry, go on. You were going to say what?
No, I think I naturally say pasta.
Pasta.
And many a Canadian has told me it's actually pasta, and that Americans say pasta. And at this point, I don't want to do anything like the Americans. Okay, so if you tell me Americans say pasta, I'm going to marry myself to pasta. Okay, this is where we're at now, But I have the lasagna. We're enjoying our Great Lakes beer.
Thank you.
I want to shout out Nick Iones. He is the CEO of Fusion Corp Developments, Inc., and Nick was my guest a couple of weeks ago. He's the newest sponsor of Toronto Mic'd. His fine podcast is called Building Toronto's Skyline, and you can subscribe and listen to that. He's also got a new book called Battle of the Skyscrapers. Interesting guy. Hear him on Toronto Mic'd. Go back into the archives for Nick Iones. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Amin, I'm wondering, you must have how many what are they called? Synthesizers?
Do you know, you were talking about this earlier, and it's not even so much synthesizers now. I have old hard drives. I even have a couple of old computers, and I want to dispose of them responsibly. So when you were calling out your sponsors, perfect. Thank you.
This is for you, man.
Yeah,
RecycleMyElectronics.ca.
Fantastic.
And it's funny because I was looking at your list of awards you won, and I'll see you won the Roland International, so I guess the synthesizer competition, Roland Japan, you won that. You're a grand prize winner, you're a first prize winner, but you've won a lot of great awards, and we'll touch on them later. But I would think you might have a museum or something where you have these great old synthesizers or keyboards, these Rolands or whatever, on display.
Well, for a while I had a wonderful studio on Adelaide Street, and it was a lovely building, but it was getting hard to maintain. And then as things have evolved, and boy, was it helpful during COVID. A lot of us have our studios at home. I have a rig actually not that dissimilar to what you
have. You have a higher ceiling, I bet.
Pardon me? It is a little higher ceiling, yes, it is. It is.
Stop showing off, okay?
Yeah.
Ridley Funeral Home at 14th and Lakeshore, and the great podcast from Brad Jones there is called Life's Undertaking, and that's another. So while you're subscribing to all these podcasts, throw that on the list. Life's Undertaking with Brad.
That's a great name.
Jones. I have some more audio, but I don't want to play it quite yet. I guess I'm curious. You mentioned you had to leave radio because you were too busy with other stuff. So what are you busy with that you don't have time for CFNY in the mid-90s?
I think in the mid-90s, the music projects I was working on really started to take off. I got into a lot of animated stuff with Nirvana and Chorus, interestingly enough. Tales from the Crypt Keeper was a big show. I think we're going to do a soundtrack of it on Terror Vision Records coming up. And that just started getting me into this world of orchestral music with synthesizers. That's what I love to do. That's when a show succeeds very well, then that's the kind of thing that starts bringing you residuals that you can make a living on. And then that led to some other big shows, like John Woo's Once a Thief, and then that led to Flashpoint, and then that led to
Flashpoint's a big one.
Flashpoint is huge. Flashpoint was a moment's notice. The original person that did it didn't quite come through, and so they had heard our demo, and suddenly Ari Posner and I are scoring Flashpoint. And Flashpoint is the third reason I didn't go to L.A. The second reason I didn't go to L.A., Steve Porcaro was getting all set up to sponsor me, and we were getting all kinds of things done. And then there was a family tragedy, which I don't talk about often, but I'm allowed to talk about now because I checked with my daughter Angela, and she said it was okay to talk about this. I have a sister. Her name is Anissa, and she lives in Calgary, and she's an amazing person, and she has 2 kids. I had a sister named Nina. Nimet, actually. At my pivotal year, the contest had just happened, doors were happening, Interstellar Suite was happening, and I was getting ready to move to L.A. My sister was having a baby. And because of complications at the hospital, there was a problem. And the baby survived, and my sister did not. 1989. I want to be accurate about this. I also don't want to be sensationalistic about it because it's not something I don't think I've ever talked about on the air before. So congratulations.
Well, I'm so sorry.
And thank you. You're sorry that, well,
I'm so sorry
yes,
that
and I
your
appreciate
sister,
that.
Your sister
Yeah, no, I
passed away.
appreciate that very much. We took a bad thing, we turned it into a good thing. My first wife, Rochelle, and I were the only ones in the family that were of the right age to adopt, and we'd been thinking about kids, but suddenly this happened. And Nina's boyfriend, it was too much for him. He was grief stricken, understandably so. So he wasn't ready to take that kind of commitment. So we just did the right thing. But as a result of that wonderful thing that happened, my game plan for LA changed because we were being interviewed as parents. Social services had to come in to make sure that we were good people, and so they could show up on a moment's notice. They could just drop by and say, "How are you doing?" and make sure that we were good parents. So neither of us could leave town. And so, for a year, for nearly 2 years, that's the kind of life it was. But then things started to open up in different ways. Things started happening in Vancouver. And then David Green in Toronto, bless his heart, he started getting me sci-fi series. I was working on the Ray Bradbury series. I was working on John Woo's Once a Thief. And all these things started to happen. And so Toronto became it. And then the third time for Los Angeles, around 2008, I said, you know what? I want to go bigger. Let's go bigger. And Steve was helping me on the second album, Virtuality. We were in the middle of that. And they got a call on this demo. Please submit some music. And that became Flashpoint. Wow. And Flashpoint became huge because Flashpoint succeeded here on CTV. It also did unbelievably well in CBS. And so I didn't have to go to LA. I could do everything from here.
Okay, here's something else you could do. I'm going to play. It's not Flashpoint, actually. I'm going to play something from a different show.
That's from the Anne with an E soundtrack, and it was my idea to begin the album and end the album with sound effects, which was an homage to my radio days.
Yeah. There's always a gig for you here, but I can only pay you in lasagna and beer.
Bless your heart. Help out
you
any way you
will
want.
up the imaging game on Toronto Mic.
This is really unique, and I'll tell you why. Because, 10 minutes ago, we were listening to tracks that was me and Rob and Karen and Jamie in a room just having fun, and then this is another world for me, but it's the same sort of thing. It's Ari Posner on piano. It's Drew Jureka on violin. It's Kirk Starkey on cello. It's Kirk's wife, Sarah Traficante, on flutes, and it's Joel Schwartz on guitar. All put together with the music contractor Bev Spotten, and we did the soundtrack to Anne with an E and all combined that stuff. And that particular track was actually only like 40 seconds long. And when we were making it for the album, we had to try kind of extend it. So then I took the multi-tracks, and just like this Tori Amos thing we were just doing, that opening is actually the same piece twice. but I just didn't have all the I didn't have the flutes and the violin and the other stuff. I just had Ari's piano, and then repeated it using the rest of the band. And so that's my radio world and my music world at the same time. It's pretty cool.
What a nice convergence.
And because I knew it was popular and because I wondered where they bring it up, there is the soundtrack to Anne with an E, which we present to you with our gratitude from Ari Posner.
You're going to be invited more often. You bring me nice gifts here. Anne with an E is a big deal, too.
Oh, what? And again, you know what? This is a strange thing. Anne with an E was another case where we had submitted a demo. Not much came from it. And then the person that did do it could not keep up with the deadline. So we get a call saying, you're on. That's happened several times in my career now, where suddenly, you must see this, and you must have gone through this yourself, right? There's people that go, you're going to be a star, I'm going to make you famous, and all that shit, and nothing happens. Right. And then somebody else comes up and says, hey, can you help me with this thing? And the next thing you know, it just takes off. You can never predict this stuff. You really can't.
And that cut I pulled is called Good Night, Anne. Yeah. But also, and we'll let it takes a bit of time to open up here, but if you have a good night Anne, you need a good morning Anne as well, because that's how the days work around here, man. So there's nights and there's mornings, and then there's nights and there's mornings.
The great melody is by Ari Posner, my co-writer, my wonderful find.
Well, you mentioned
so that's me on strings, and then Ari comes in on piano.
And he does the music for, I almost called it Age of Persuasion.
Age of Persuasion,
but it's called Under the Influence.
It's Under the Influence now, yeah.
Right. I know that he gets a shout out at the end of that podcast. Good morning, Amin. So what are you working on these days? What's keeping you busy?
I'm actually working with Ari on a series called Rosie's Rules. It's just animated fun stuff. It's actually very, very small preschool stuff, which is fun. I just finished doing a film called The Wall Street Boy Kip Kemboy. That was fun because I got to use synths and real players all at the same time. That was the best, to have the best of both worlds. And it's a nice David and Goliath story. It's about a kid that figures out the stock market and is able to beat evil stock people at their own game. A nice David and Goliath story that we can enjoy in this day and age.
How many Canadian Screen Awards have you won?
We are at 7.
Do you have these on display somewhere?
I can't believe they are on display in our dining room. Okay. My wife actually put them there. Bless her heart. I did not put them there. She put them there. Thank you, Danielle.
What is it about your humility? Like you don't want to appear too arrogant, too proud? 'Cause I've noticed a few times in this conversation, it's like you seem uncomfortable with pumping your own tires.
You're very sweet. I think a couple of times in my life I saw some people that were really full of themselves, and I never wanted to be like that. I've also had
Name those people. That's why you're here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's nice the way you've done this, and your research is amazing, by the way. You've been able to cover all the ups and downs and the back and forths on things. And like I said, I've had so many times where people are like, "You're gonna be famous," and nothing happens. And then other times you just experiment with something and it takes off. So I never ever want to go, yes, I orchestrated this all, because I have no idea how any of this happened.
But you did win these Canadian Screen Awards.
The Canadian Screens, yes. But I think there's one of them which is actually me solo. The others are all with Ari Posner. They're with Sarah Sleen. They're with Antonio Naranjo. Terrible. I'm sorry. Chris Kuzdak.
I love Sarah Sleen.
Sorry. Myro Stam.
She was once in the Toronto Mike calendar, and then she politely said she was too busy, removed herself from the calendar, and I noticed she's never, re-entered the calendar.
I can call her this afternoon and tell her what a mistake she's made.
Tell her get it back in the calendar, Sarah. Come on.
Absolutely. So
She's great.
yeah,
But you've worked with some
totally.
very talented people, but
And
you're
it's-
very humble.
And,
good
well, it's a
proximity.
team, you know. Anybody who gets full of themselves and say they can do this by themselves at home, no, it is a team of people around you. And not even if it's just the engineers or the musicians or the players. It's the agents, it's the technical people, it's the lawyers, it's all those people that help your career and help sustain your career. And I'm grateful to all of them as well. So yeah.
And it's worth noting you have a credit on The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes, that was fun. And again, a quick solution. Michael Perlmutter, they had a scene where there's this harpist who is playing during one of the birthing sequences in one of the first episodes. And they were supposed to get a harp player who could play harp. And then, as always happens, that actor wasn't available. They got somebody else. And she just did some random shit, and she couldn't play. So then they have this scene with this person doing this and no idea what those notes are. So Michael Perlmutter, great music supervisor, calls me and says, I've got an interesting job for you.
Yeah.
So I created a piece of music, a harp. It was like a 2-minute piece of music. But on certain shots on screen, it had to perfectly synchronize with what the harpist was doing. So, you know, and that was an overnight, please stop everything. I need some help with it.
Well, you're the man to call. One day they'll figure out you should be called first.
I'm just happy to be part of
yeah,
any team.
you called someone else. They're not doing the job. They're not doing it right. And then you end up calling them in. Well, what if you called them in first and you just saved yourself that hassle?
Hey, I've made some mistakes and people have saved my ass too. So that's why it's all good in the end.
Technical production by Rob Johnston. There you go. All right. Thank you, Robbie J, for that note, by the way, when you're listening in East York. I think he's an East York guy, along with Troy Birch from Great Lakes Brewery, and Bob Willette's really close by, and who I'm going to name and Chris Cooksey. I'm naming all the guys out there. But Amin, you were fantastic. I love this chat, buddy.
I hope it was help to somebody. It was
Did
a
we miss
wonderful
anything?
trip down memory
was there
lane.
Anywhere? Because I would mention something and you'd pull something out of the sack. Is there anything else in that Santa sack that never got pulled?
I've worked on a lot of IMAX films, which has been really great. That's where I've been able to use a large orchestra. So this is a soundtrack from some of the IMAX films I've done with producer David Lickley.
We got to keep that IMAX screen at Ontario Place. At
Yes,
this
no kidding. And then this is something you can thumb through later after we're done.
Wait,
this
so I get to hold on to that?
You get to, well, you can leaf through it, and if you grab whatever you want and scan it, and then get me the binder back. But it's the production binder from those days.
Oh yeah, it's oh my God. There's the floppy disks are in here.
Yeah.
See, this belongs in a museum. I mean, what are you doing here? This shouldn't be leaving the home. All right, so I will leaf through it here when we wrap up here. But thanks for being my guest here today, and
Such
it
an
was
honor.
an absolute
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you for your research, man.
Well, I got a reputation to uphold over here, but I did hear Amin. I was told Amin is a good guy, and I said I'll be the judge of that. And I'm here to say, I think you're a good guy.
Thank you, sir.
You
Work
passed
hard
it.
and be nice. That's
you know,
a
you know
mission
what? I
statement.
changed my hoodie. I had a hoodie earlier today that said, "It's cool to be kind." That's what it said.
It's huge. It's huge.
But it's in short supply
It's
these days.
so simple.
Have you noticed
It
everyone's
is-
become a bit of an asshole?
We have to learn how to talk to people that are different from us, and media gets a huge blame for polarizing so much. It doesn't matter whatever your political affiliation is. We're all supposed to be able to understand where the other one's coming from, and that has gone wrong on a galactic level. So even the person next door whom you may not like, or that person whom you know is a different politic than you, get to know them, understand why they feel the way they do. Gosh, we started getting into all of this. We just have to be able to learn how to get along with each other and just be nice, be humble, remember that the other person is also important, and go from there.
And that, I was gonna say, and that's one to grow, and that's one to grow on.
Didn't know we were going there.
And that's one to grow on by a thin tortilla, Amin Bhatia. And that brings us to the end of our 1,639th show. Wow. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. This cover of Rosie in Gray by Lowest of the Low is by the aforementioned Rob Pruce. Like he made this closing theme cover, and these are Easter eggs at the end. So he does Rosie in Gray, and he knows things that were mentioned on Toronto Mike episodes. This is the Pizza Nova because Alfie Zappacosta came on. So you get these like Easter eggs at the end, and he's gonna give us an updated version soon. And this is his big hit because he's got a co-write credit on Romantic Traffic, which was like his big hit. But maybe he's got a Honeymoon Suite write
Ooh.
credit on a hit too. He was
That
there
would
for a
be
while
great.
there. Oh my goodness, I'm running out of song. Come on, Mike. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, Building Toronto Skyline, and Ridley Funeral Home. See you Wednesday when Stu Stone returns.